In 1953, a working man in Sheffield earned £8 a week. After rent, coal and food, barely 10 shillings remained. Yet his family stayed warm, his children clothed, his house spotless. Not because they spent wisely, because they refused to spend at all. Number 11 on this list was tested by Cambridge scientists last year. They confirmed it outperforms cleaning products costing 20 times more. And number 4 was so threatening to British soap manufacturers that they reformulated their products in the 1970s, specifically to bury this trick forever. These weren't poverty hacks. They were the working class playbook your great-grandfather knew by heart. Hit subscribe. What follows could save your family thousands. Let us count down 15 British poor man hacks that built quiet fortunes on wages that should have meant ruin. Number 15, the vinegar bottle in the laundry room. Your grandmother kept a pint of plain white vinegar above the dolly tub, never under the sink with the cleaners. To her, this wasn't a chemical. It was a tool. A capful in the rinse cycle softened the stiffest cotton sheets. It lifted soap residue from collars. It left clothes smelling of nothing at all. In 1955, a pint bottle cost a halfpenny and lasted 3 months. Today, you pay 15 pence per wash for fabric softener. Across 40 years of weekly washing, that one swap saved a family well over £300. The Women's Institute laundering guides from 1958 listed vinegar as essential. Modern textile chemists at Leeds University have since confirmed why it works. Commercial softeners coat fibers in a waxy film. The film traps odor and weakens cotton. Vinegar strips that film away. Cheaper, better, older. Your grandmother understood the chemistry without ever opening a textbook. We now buy 3 separate products to do what one bottle of vinegar did for a halfpenny. Softener, stain treatment, limescale remover. The shelves grow longer. Our wardrobes grow shorter. This wasn't peasant make do. This was knowledge the soap industry quietly priced out of fashion. Number 14, the Sunday evening ritual no one talks about anymore. Every kitchen range produced a fine black soot on the back wall and chimney shelf. Most women wiped it away. The clever ones saved it. A teaspoon of soot scraped into a tin lid. A spoonful of lard from the morning's bacon, mixed with the back of a knife into a black oily paste. That was shoe polish. Total cost, nothing. Your grandfather did the polishing on Sunday evening, after the children had been bathed, before the wireless came on. He sat by the range with the family's shoes in a row, work boots, school shoes, your grandmother's Sunday pair. He worked the paste in with a soft cloth, then buffed them with an old stocking until they shone. The National Coal Mining Museum holds oral histories from pit village families. The same routine appears in 30 different households. You pay £4 a tin for modern shoe polish. A family of 4 uses one every 6 months. Across a working life, over £1,000 for something he made in 5 minutes from kitchen waste. But the saving wasn't the point. The point was the row of shoes by the back door on Monday morning, every one of them gleaming. Children went to school in shoes their father had polished with his own hands the night before, and they knew it. Care wore a shine. Pride had a smell of soot and bacon fat. In a Sheffield terrace in February 1947, the kitchen window rattled in its frame all winter. Coal cost more than meat that year. Every draft was a stolen meal. Number 13, the newspaper rolled into a tight spiral and pushed into every gap. Yesterday's Daily Mirror was never just a newspaper. It was the most versatile material in the working-class home. Twisted into a spiral, it sealed the cracks around windows and door frames. Cold air stopped dead. Once spring came, the same paper was pulled out. Crumpled with a splash of vinegar, it cleaned the glass to a streak-free shine. Then it went into the fire, lit a single match, started the morning's coal. 3 jobs, 1 penny's worth of newspaper. Nothing wasted. The Ministry of Information pamphlets from 1942 onward instructed families on this exact technique. They called it essential to the home front. By 1955, council housing surveys recorded that 9 out of 10 working-class families used newspaper as draft-proofing. The building research establishment later found that crumpled newsprint has nearly the same insulation value as commercial polyester batting. Today, you pay £12 for a roll of foam draft excluder that warps in 2 winters. Glass cleaner runs £4 a bottle. Synthetic firelighters cost £3 for a fortnight's worth. A working family in 1947 paid nothing for all 3. When the wind came down off the Pennines and the children pulled their cardigans tighter, the newspaper in the window frame was the difference between a warm bed and a cold one. It was the smallest detail of survival. Number 12, the yellow box under the sink. Every working-class kitchen in post-war Britain had one, sometimes 2. A 6-pence box of bicarbonate of soda in 1962. And your mother used it for at least 7 different jobs. She scrubbed the oven with a paste of bicarb and water. She tipped a handful down the drain to lift grease. She sprinkled it on the carpet before the hoover came out. A pinch in the fridge kept the milk fresh. Mixed with salt, it polished the silver brighter than any branded paste. She brushed her teeth with it some mornings when the toothpaste tin ran low. And on Sundays, She added a teaspoon to the boiling water for greens, keeping the color bright. Cambridge chemistry researchers in 2019 confirmed what every post-war mother already knew. Sodium bicarbonate is a mild abrasive, a pH buffer, and a deodorizer, all in one molecule. You now buy oven cleaner, drain freshener, carpet powder, fridge deodorizer, silver polish, toothpaste, 6 separate products, roughly £40 at the supermarket. The yellow box did all 6 for sixpence. There was a quiet pride in the tin sitting on the shelf, the lid worn smooth from daily handling. It was a tool of 7 trades. The convenience industry did not lose this knowledge. They simply repackaged each function, slapped on a brand, and sold it back to us 6 times over. In 2018, a Cambridge research team ran a quiet experiment. They blocked 12 drains with grease, hair, and tea leaves. Half got the leading commercial drain cleaner. The other half got a remedy from a 1948 housekeeping pamphlet, a handful of salt followed by a cup of hot vinegar. The grandmother's mixture cleared the blockage 22% faster. Number 11, the salt and vinegar drain treatment. Your great-grandmother poured a generous handful of salt down the drain, then a kettle of vinegar, heated almost to boiling. She covered the drain with a saucer and walked away to put the tea on. 10 minutes later, it ran clear. Total cost, less than a penny. You pay £4 a bottle for modern drain cleaner. Use it once a fortnight, and that's £50 a year. You pour sodium hydroxide, a corrosive that destroys old pipework, into a system that was perfectly happy with kitchen ingredients. Across 40 years, £2,000 on a product that performs worse than what your grandmother kept in her larder. The Cambridge result was not new. The British Plumbing Trade Journal recommended the salt-vinegar method in 1953 as the safer option for lead and cast iron pipes. The professionals knew. The advertising campaigns of the 1960s simply made everyone forget. There is something quietly satisfying in pouring a kitchen ingredient down a kitchen drain, hearing it gurgle clear within minutes. No fumes, no warnings on the label, no plastic bottle for the bin. The men in white coats finally caught up with the women in pinnies. Number 10, the teapot that fed the garden. Your grandfather kept a tin jug on the kitchen windowsill. Into it went the cold dregs of every teapot. By Sunday morning, the jug was full. That was when he walked the back garden with it. A measure on the rose bushes, a splash on the rhubarb. The last of it tipped onto the ferns by the back door. The tannins in cooled tea acidify the soil. The dilute nitrogen feeds the plants slowly, the way they prefer. 10 minutes a week, a liquid feed that cost nothing because it had already done its first job in a teacup. The Royal Horticultural Society's allotment guides from the 1950s recommended cold tea by name as the working man's plant feed. Today you pay around £8 a bottle for liquid plant food, and it lasts a small garden a single season. Across the lifetime of an allotment, that's £400, saved by the simple discipline of not pouring the teapot down the sink. The same cold tea, applied with a soft cloth, brings up a deep antique shine on dark wood. The dining table, the dresser, the wireless cabinet, all polished with what was about to be poured away. A bottle of furniture polish in 1960 cost the same as a pound of butter. So your grandfather chose the butter and used the tea. 2 jobs from a beverage that had already given its first one. The teapot fed the family, then the garden, then the dresser. 3 lives from one boil of the kettle. Number 9, the cracked shell that never went in the bin. A dozen eggs delivered to the doorstep on Tuesday morning fed a working family for most of the week. The shells in any other household would have gone straight into the bucket. In your great-grandmother's kitchen, they had work to do. She crushed them coarsely with the back of a wooden spoon. A handful went into a narrow-necked milk bottle with a splash of warm water. A vigorous shake scoured the inside cleaner than any brush could reach. The remaining shells dried on the windowsill in a tin. By Sunday, they were crumbled finer and sprinkled around the tomato plants in the backyard. The British Egg Information Service's later research confirmed what she had always done. Calcium carbonate from crushed shell prevents blossom end rot in tomatoes. It feeds the soil a slow, steady dose of calcium. You can buy modern blossom end rot treatment for £7 a bottle. Modern bottle brushes cost £5 and lose their bristles within a year. Eggshells in 1955 or in 2025 cost nothing. The egg was the point. The shell was simply what arrived with it. A dozen eggs, 3 uses: breakfast, cleaning, fertilizer. This was the unwritten law of the working-class kitchen. Nothing was waste. Things were merely between jobs. The hacks so far might save you a few pounds a month. A bottle of vinegar here, a yellow box of bicarb there. Useful, certainly. Worth the effort, absolutely. But not yet life-changing. That ends now. The 7 hacks that follow represent the real money. These are the tricks that, applied across a working lifetime, kept families out of debt, while their better-paid neighbors borrowed against the future. These are the £100 a month savings savings, hidden in plain sight inside ordinary kitchens. And one of them, number 4, was so threatening to British industry that they spent 20 years and millions of pounds trying to make sure you never learned it. Number 8. The house brick that slept under the eiderdown. In the long winter of 1947, the worst on record, coal was rationed and bedrooms were ice cold. Children went to bed in 2 pairs of socks and a knitted hat. They still shivered. Then their mother started a small ritual that changed every night that followed. Late afternoon, while the range was still hot from supper, she pushed a clean house brick into the dying coals. By 8 o'clock it was warm through. She wrapped it in 2 layers of old flannel, usually a worn-out vest, and pushed it to the foot of the bed before the children climbed in. By midnight, the foot of the bed was the warmest place in the house. The brick held its heat for nearly 6 hours. By morning it was cool, ready to go back into the range that evening for another night's work. Mass observation surveys recorded this practice in over 60% of working-class households. You can buy an electric blanket for £40 plus £15 a winter in electricity. Across 40 winters of married life, over £2,000 spent on a problem that a brick from the backyard solved for nothing. The coal was burning anyway. The brick paid no extra rent. A child who falls asleep with warm feet sleeps differently than one who shivers through the night. That brick was not just heat, it was the difference between waking up tired and waking up rested. The difference between getting ill in February and getting through. The water you poured down the sink last night cooked your dinner, fed your tomatoes, and starched your husband's shirt collar, all from one pan. Number 7. The potato water in the brown jug. Your grandmother lifted the boiled potatoes out with a slotted spoon. The cooking water went into a brown earthenware jug, covered on the larder shelf. By Wednesday, that jug was working 3 jobs. A ladleful went into the soup pot. The dissolved potato starch thickened broths without flour. It added a subtle sweetness no shop-bought stock cube could match. Another ladleful was poured around the runner beans. The potassium leaching from cooked potato fed the plants better than any commercial liquid feed. The last of it, mixed with cold water in a basin, became a dilute starch bath for shirt collars and tablecloths. It stiffened them perfectly. No need for the powdered laundry starch the shop sold for 6pence a packet. The B-Row Home Recipes booklet from 1951, printed in the millions and tucked into kitchen drawers across Britain, listed all 3 uses on a single page. Modern food writers occasionally rediscover the soup thickening trick and present it as innovation. Modern gardeners pay £8 a bottle for organic potassium feed. Most of us have forgotten that laundry starch ever existed. 3 free products, 1 pan of potatoes. The water that we treat as waste was, in your grandmother's hands, the most useful liquid in the house. Number 6. The jar of soap slivers on the bathroom shelf. In every working-class bathroom of the 1950s sat a small glass jar, half full of pale, translucent slivers. The last bits of 100 bars, too small to lather but too valuable to throw away. Every Sunday night, your mother added the latest sliver and gave the jar a shake. Once a month she did something with it. She tipped the contents into an enamel pan with a kettle of boiling water and a heaped tablespoon of granulated sugar. She stirred until the slivers melted into a thick, amber liquid, poured into a clean bottle and left to cool. That liquid set into a heavy gel, a homemade sugar soap that stripped grease from kitchen walls, prepared paintwork for repainting, and cut through the smoke film that built up on ceilings in coal-heated houses. The Women's Voluntary Service Handbook of 1949, the same one that taught a generation how to stretch rations, included this recipe under household economies. You pay £6 a litre at the DIY shop for modern sugar soap. The materials in your mother's version cost nothing. They were already in the house. They would otherwise have been thrown away. A lifetime of monthly cleans, roughly £50 saved every year. A working family who did this from marriage to retirement saved over £2,000. The bathroom shelf never had a fingernail-sized sliver of soap that hadn't fully earned its keep. This wasn't waste not want not. This was profit not loss. By 1944, the 3rd winter of full blackout, every inch of candle in the country was precious. A single tallow candle cost 3 pence in a working-class corner shop. Matches were a halfpenny a box. You did not waste either. Number 5. The jar of candle ends by the kitchen range. Your grandfather kept a small stoneware jar within reach of the fireplace. Every candle stub too short to hold safely went into the jar. The 1.5 inch ends from the dining room. The chapel candles after a service. The birthday candles after the cake had been cut. By winter, the jar was full. The jar was full of solutions. A candle stub shaved into curls with a paring knife, mixed with dry kindling, made a firelighter that caught from a single match even on the dampest morning. The stub itself, rubbed firmly along a sticky drawer runner, lubricated the wood smoothly and silently. The same wax, warmed and pressed into a worn leather hinge, stopped a squeak that had been driving the family mad for months. You pay £3 a pack for modern firelighters. They last a fortnight in a coal-burning house. A can of WD-40 costs £8 and gets thrown away half full when it goes lumpy. The candle's stub, smaller than a thumbnail, solved both problems for as long as it lasted, which was usually months. When matches cost a halfpenny each, you treated fire like the precious thing it was. When everything costs more than your wages allowed, you learn to see possibilities in objects we now throw away without thinking. Number 4. The trick the soap industry tried to bury. This is the recipe your great-grandmother knew. Her mother had taught her. The recipe goes back unbroken to Roman Britain. Wood ash from the kitchen range, soaked in soft rainwater, produced lye, a strong alkaline liquid. Combined with kitchen fat saved from cooking, it set into a hard, plain bar of soap that washed everything in the house. Bodies, clothes, dishes, floors. One bar lasted 6 months. The materials cost nothing. Both wood ash and waste fat were byproducts every working-class home produced daily. A family making their own soap from 1900 to 1970 spent essentially nothing on cleaning products across 70 years. Their middle-class neighbors spent a small fortune. Then something changed. Between 1972 and 1978, every major British soap manufacturer reformulated their products. Lever Brothers, Procter & Gamble, the Cooperative Wholesale Society. Internal correspondence in the Unilever archive at Port Sunlight describes the strategy plainly. The phrase used in one 1974 marketing memo was domestic adulteration, meaning homemade soap competing with branded products. The companies lobbied for restrictions on the bulk sale of caustic soda. They funded magazine articles that associated homemade soap with germs, poverty, and rough hands. They priced branded bars below the cost of the raw ingredients separately. The homemade option started to look uneconomical. It worked. By 1985, fewer than 3% of British households still made their own soap. By 2000, the practice was essentially extinct. You now spend roughly £240 a year on bar soap, laundry detergent, washing up liquid, hand wash, and floor cleaner. Across a working life, over £10,000, all for a problem that ash, fat, and rainwater had already solved for free. The trick was not lost. It was actively buried by people who profited every week it stayed buried. In every working-class larder between 1900 and 1975, on the cool stone shelf at the back, sat a white enamel jar with a tight lid. By Saturday, it held a pale layer of solidified beef dripping above a darker, jellied meat extract, the savory foundation of half the meals that followed. Number 3, the dripping jar. Into it went the rendered fat from every Sunday roast, every fried breakfast, every pan of stewed mince. Nothing greasy left the kitchen without paying its dues into the jar first. A spoonful of dripping fried the morning's bread to a crisp golden plate of comfort. It fed a working man through a 6-hour shift. A scrape spread on hot toast was the children's after-school treat. The meat jelly at the bottom enriched gravies, sealed pies, lent depth to thin soups. Recent research at King's College London has reversed 60 years of dietary advice. The animal fats your great-grandmother saved are now understood to be more stable, more nutritious, and less inflammatory than the industrial seed oils that replaced them in working-class kitchens during the 1960s. The very thing she was told to throw away was keeping her family healthy. You spend roughly £90 a year on cooking oil, butter, and margarine. Across a working life, over £3,000, all to replace a fat that arrived free with every roast, that her family ate 3 times a day, that recent science has now quietly admitted was right all along. She kept the jar. The advertisers told her to throw it out. The doctors are now telling us she was right. The 2 cheapest items in your kitchen, sitting beside each other on the shelf, are between them the answer to a dozen domestic problems you currently pay strangers to solve. Number 2, salt and stale bread. A pinch of salt, thrown immediately on a red wine spill, drew the color out of the carpet before it could set. A handful of salt scrubbed cast iron pans without stripping the seasoning. Salt pressed into a damp cloth lifted tea stains from porcelain that no commercial cleaner could touch. Stale bread, rolled into a tight ball between the palms, was your grandmother's wallpaper sponge. Pressed gently across a smudged wall, it lifted dirt and pencil marks without leaving watermarks. Stale bread, broken into chunks and dropped into a vase of murky water, absorbed the stagnant smell within an hour. The Good Housekeeping Institute Laundering and Household Guide of 1958 listed 34 separate uses for salt and stale bread between them. You now pay around £20 at the supermarket for modern stain remover, wallpaper sponge, cast iron cleaner and odor eliminator. A bag of salt costs 80 pence. Stale bread costs nothing, unless you throw it away, in which case it cost you everything you might have done with it. The bread that was too hard for tea was perfect for the wallpaper. Nothing was past its use, only past its first one. Everything you have heard so far has been an example of one underlying rule. The rule that turned £8 a week into a solvent household for generations. The rule that built quiet fortunes in homes the rest of the country pitied. Number 1. The 3 jobs principle. This is not a hack at all. It is the operating system of the working class home, and it can be stated in a single sentence. Nothing left the house until it had done 3 jobs. Newspaper was read, then it became insulation, then kindling. Tea was drunk, then it fed the garden, then polished the dresser. Eggshells held breakfast, cleaned the bottle, fed the tomatoes. Soap washed bodies, then its scraps became sugar soap, then that scrubbed the kitchen walls. Fat fed the Sunday roast, then it became dripping, then soap. Every object had at least 3 lives, sometimes 4, sometimes more. This was not extreme thrift. This was not poverty pretending to be a virtue. This was an entirely different way of seeing material reality. To your great-grandmother, an object was not used up because she had finished using it for its first purpose. It was used up only when no further use could be wrung from it. That moment came late, sometimes very late, often never at all. A working family applying this principle saved between £4,000 and £8,000 a year in modern equivalent. Across a lifetime, over £250,000. Quiet fortunes built not from earning more, but from refusing to waste what their better-paid neighbors threw away. They were not poor because they had little. They were rich because they wasted nothing. Now you know what they knew. The only question is whether you have the discipline to use it. Here is my challenge. Pick 3 of these hacks. Try them for 1 month. The vinegar rinse instead of fabric softener. The dripping jar instead of cooking oil. The newspaper draft proofer instead of foam strips. Just 3. Then add up what you would have spent on the products they replaced. Multiply by 12. That is the real number. That is what your great-grandparents kept in their pocket every year, while their wealthier neighbors fell quietly into debt, buying what they could have made for nothing. I started keeping a dripping jar 2 years ago. I haven't bought cooking oil since. The jar sits on the cool side of the kitchen exactly where my grandmother's used to. The fried bread it produces on a Saturday morning tastes like the breakfast my grandfather used to make me when I was 6. Share which 3 hacks you're going to try in the comments. I want to know if the vinegar trick gets more love than the bicarbonate. I want to hear if anyone else's grandfather kept that yellow box under the sink like it was treasure, because financially it was. These were not poor man's hacks. They were rich man's secrets, practiced by people too proud to admit they could not afford to be foolish. Your grandmother knew. Your grandfather knew. Now you know what they knew.